As you heard in Part 1, CBP is proposing to hire thousands of more Border Patrol agents while lowering the requirements, yet supposedly not their standards. This is Part 2 and the conclusion of my special report. Now, when you go back to S-744, which was a bill that was passed by the Gang of Eight, which I refer to as the Gang of Traitors, Senators Reid, Corker, and Hoeven, their amendment was supposed to add 20,000 more Border Patrol agents. Well, we know what the point of that was. That point was to meet numbers. Let's go back to 2006, 2007, because here's what happened. The Border Patrol, under David Aguilar, wanted to meet numbers to shut Congress up and to give them numbers. So what they did was they sandbagged those investigations that should have taken place. The responsibility for background checks falls to the Office of Internal Affairs, CBP Internal Affairs. Now, they have a record that's highly alarming both inside the agency with employees and among civilian experts, including myself. So what did they do? Well, they didn't run background checks. In fact, they basically allowed people who had no business being allowed to enter the academy, who never should have passed the background checks that never took place, to enter the Border Patrol Academy in Artesia, New Mexico. And what was the standard for this? Well, that the academy would weed them out. None of that took place. So what they in fact did was hired thousands of trainees who had no business serving in the Border Patrol, where there are still problems to this day. Aguilar's trainees who have since moved into management positions, people who never should have been there in the first place. And what has happened? Well, it's a disaster, as President Trump likes to say, but it actually is a disaster. Office of Inspector General was under scrutiny and investigation. Office of Professional Responsibility, Office of Internal Affairs, were massive disasters. And of course, these agencies, the managers, were basically all buddies and cronies who used to go after their people and do everything possible to prevent them from doing their job, not just in Washington, D.C., but throughout the country at all the field offices. Now, they talked about this whole issue of the polygraph. Well, an individual who ran such area was a Dr. Susan Keverline. She was, at the time of my report, the acting deputy director of the Integrity Program Division. And so she, Dr. Keverline, a psychologist, she presented false information, or she would just outright blame the agents' families on why the agents were committing suicide and not what was taking place inside of the agency itself. So what you have here is a situation where they weren't recruiting your best that you should have gone, the most fertile ground, the United States Armed Services. They were recruiting the non-traditional places that you would ever think, and including in Mexico. Now, think about that. We're recruiting for a national security type agency inside of Mexico, and my report identified everything, identified who the individuals were, identified what they were doing and what they weren't doing. Here's one example. Office of Internal Affairs was sandbagging cases to a ridiculous level. In an exhibit I presented to Congress, they showed an amnesty month done in July 2011, where under then Assistant Commissioner Jim Tomczyk, basically they had 713 cases that were supposed to be investigated. Well, they declared an amnesty month, and they were swept under the rugs, swept under the carpet. Those cases were not investigated, and that was just in 1 month. Imagine what was taking place from 2006 on, after the Hunter-Sensenbrenner bill passed in the summer of 2006 that was signed by President George W. Bush took place. So what you have here is just a complete situation that was out of control then. And how is it going to be better today when most of the individuals who were there, yes, upper management is mostly gone, but their buddies are still there who were placed in those positions. So not much is going to change, because there really hasn't been a house cleaning yet in all the top management positions. You have a disaster. So now you have the Trump administration who wants to hire all these new individuals that the word is through the McAleenan memo, 5 pages, February 17, 2017, that's going to water the system down? No, we've seen it before. We've seen what happened before, and that problem is going to continue. And Jason Ahern can comment on all this all he wants, but he was part of the problem then, and now it's the height of hypocrisy. When he should have said something then, when he was there to say it then, what did he do? Well, he did what he always did. Go along to get along, screw up, move up, because that's exactly how it was, and that's what it's been like at DHS since the beginning. This is the kind of situation that has to be fixed, but it can only be fixed by bringing in individuals who are aware of these things, who can point out the problems, and who can help clean house.